AP Euro, this is Mr. Psy with another Psy production. Short, quick video on key things happening with Austria-Hungary, the growth of Marxism, and the birth of Anarchism. First, we begin with Austria in decline. Austria is ultimately going to have to sign a dual monarchy. Why are they doing this? Very simple. They've lost territory from the Austro-Sardinian War. They've lost status due to the Austro-Prussian War. They don't lose any land during the Austro-Prussian War, but they've lost that sort of sense that they are an important, powerful empire. They turn their attention elsewhere. The government is forced to sign an agreement with the Magyars, with the Hungarians. Some people are going to ask, why is it that the Hungarians allowed this to happen? They didn't just go for independence. Many people wanted it, but ultimately they accepted a compromise because they had like-minded foreign policy and military aspirations. Particularly, they're worried about dealing with aggressive nationalist groups within their borders, which Austria can attest to the same kind of problems. They're also worried about the expansion of Russia into the Caucasus regions. In the Hungarian Empire, essentially are marginalizing other groups here. So any of these other ethnic groups are going to find that they don't really have a lot to gain here from this situation. Franz Joseph will rule as emperor of both Austria and Hungary. You'll see basically the Hungarian nobility get to kind of do what they want. There are a couple key things, as you'll see in your text, in terms of a couple key things that are shared between the two empires, but mainly it's a foreign policy and military partnership. Here's what we're talking about. If we look at this map here, we can see concentration of Germans, concentration of Hungarians, but certainly many other ethnic groups that are going to feel like they want their own territory. They want their own piece of the pie. Part of this dual monarchy, part of this agreement, is a recognition on the part of the Germans and Hungarians that each of them are sort of the bosses of their own region, and they're each going to adopt the policy of marginalizing the other ethnic groups to keep their groups in power. Now, ultimately, when you have multi-ethnic populations together in situations like this, there are challenges. These challenges are exacerbated by the situations we had in Austria. We had an oppressive and authoritarian state by its very nature, allowing very few voting rights, almost no representation for the non-German or non-Hungarian populations. In this sense, unlike Italy, unlike Germany, nationalism will weaken the empire. And as they turn their attention to the Balkan regions, and as we build up to World War I, we will see that this will bring about the ultimate demise of the Austrian Empire, now the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Bam! So, as we get to part 2 of our quick little video clip here, we're looking for ultimately how Marxism is going to change over time, how socialism is going to change over time. What you need to be able to do here is look at two groups of people sort of vying for each other. But before we do that, let's look at why this is so popular. There's an allure to what we've got going on here. Workers had an affinity for socialist ideas. The socialists were the ones who had their best interests in heart, or so they thought. It may become a dirty word of sorts in our day, but social ideas were extremely popular amongst the working class people of this time. Why? Well, simply they seemed to be the only group who talked about improving the lives of the common people, the working people. They argued for real, tangible ideas and programs. Extended voting rights, increasing participation in government, improving living and working conditions, bargaining or striking for better wages, for better hours, for better situations. The bottom line, though, is that you're going to see that things ultimately got better for people over time. Now let's talk about the factions, and then we'll ultimately go back to how things got better. You have a choice here. There are of sorts many different Marxist or socialist groups, but in essence, you have an evolution taking place. You've got traditional Marxism, and now a movement towards evolutionary or revisionist socialism. We're looking at the big revolution, the big change in society versus small progressive improvements. Now this is put forward by a man named Edward Bernstein, and I don't have his name up on there, but Edward Bernstein, a German intellectual, essentially dissects a lot of what Marx has to offer, and he comes up in his work Evolutionary Socialism, written in the year 1898. He basically argues that capitalism is here to stay. It's not going to change. It's not going anywhere. And that if people really want to improve their lives, they'll do so at the ballot box. They'll make small incremental changes. And this is essentially what happens. That you see that nation states recognize this and they become somewhat responsive. And that's why we've talked in class about sort of the so-called responsive national state. There becomes no need for revolution in many of these countries because the standard of living is on the rise and because conditions improve. And so you see many people go the way of revisionist socialism. They go to the ballot box, and you see the growth of socialist parties in places like Germany, for instance. Now, that doesn't mean that the Marxists or other socialists are just going to sit by and let things happen. And you'll see they'll be the primary agents for change or for negative responses to this age of global industrialization. And in 1864 and later again, another point in time, you'll begin to see things like the First and Second Communist or Marxist International. And these are gatherings of socialists from around the world with the intent of spreading an international Marxist revolution. Now, this has a profound psychological impact on European society. Activities like May Day celebrations, where once a year you have strikes throughout Europe and other parts of the world. Here, even today, we still see some May Day displays by a bunch of real winners. All right. So Marxism and Socialism was definitely there to stay. The ideas were out there. They were not going away. At this time, in this age of international Marxism, you also get the birth and the growth of something known as anarchism. Anarchists essentially argue that true law or true authority for law does not come from organized society, does not come from people. It comes from nature. And therefore they're going to argue that the idea of property, the idea that there's a government that can control your property, the idea that capitalism is a real system is a lie. We look at Joseph Proudhon as perhaps the first anarchist or the first, perpetuator or the godfather that eventually leads the way towards anarchism. In his work, What is Property? He argued essentially that property is simply theft. That it's something that those in society who have property got it because they stole from the hard work of other people. He's actually known as the first to actually use the word anarchist. All right. We'll see anarchism grow tremendously near the end of the century. Various anarchist enterprises will be responsible for assassinations around the world. In his work, What is Property? He argued essentially that property is simply theft. That it's something that those in society who have property got it because they stole from the hard work of other people. He's actually known as the first to actually use the word anarchist. All right. We'll see anarchism grow tremendously near the end of the century. Various anarchist enterprises will be responsible for assassinations around the world. Thanks for paying attention to this side production. Here's a list of works consulted on this matter. Hope that you found this to be interesting and somewhat helpful. Take care.